When you're ready to pop the question, the last thing you want to do is second-guess the ring. At BlueNile.com, you can design a one-of-a-kind ring with the ease and convenience of shopping online. Choose your diamond and setting. When you find the one, you'll get it delivered right to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code WELCOME to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code WELCOME at BlueNile.com for $50 off your purchase. BlueNile.com, code WELCOME.
Hey parents, Greenlight is here to take one big thing off your to-do list, teaching your kids about money. With a Greenlight debit card and money app of their own, kids and teens learn to earn, save, and invest. You can send money instantly, set flexible controls, and get real-time notifications of your kids' money activity. Set up chores and put allowance on autopilot to reward them for their hard work. Then learn about the world of money together. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.
Welcome to Haunting History, the podcast that reaches back into the past for the events that shocked everyone. Tales of true crime, mystery, and the macabre. And when we're lucky, the stories where history and the people who lived it and the paranormal meet. Now, who doesn't live a good ghost story, right? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. I'm your host, Kat. The episode that we're replaying is called America's Unknown Child. And during the episode, we talk a lot about the Vidocq Society. And it just so happens that our Bob Taft with the Orange County Sheriff's Department made a visit to the Vidocq Society in Philadelphia to present one of his cases to them. And I wanted to start this episode off talking to him about the Vidocq Society, because if you're one of our old-time listeners, you may have already heard the episode. If you are newer, a lot of these episodes were not available for a really long time for some reason on the major podcast platforms, but they are now, and I pulled it up, and I'm going to re-record it I'm going to republish it this week. So I just wanted to really touch base with you. Hi, Bob.
Hello, how are you?
Good. When you told me that you were going to present one of your cases to the Vidocq Society, I mean, to say I was jealous was an understatement. I think I begged you to take me with you.
Well, you weren't the only person that was begging to take me with them, or take them with me as well.
Well, and my big thing was, I was so convinced, and you have to tell everybody if I was right or not, so convinced that they meet in an old building and that it's a dark paneled room and they drink whiskey and smoke cigars.
Well, half of that is right. They do meet in a very old building. They meet in the Union Hall in downtown Philadelphia, and it did have dark paneled walls. The building itself is actually pretty large. I was surprised at how big it is. It's narrow, but it's very deep. And the meeting that the room that we were in for this meeting was like an old library. So it was actually very interesting.
I literally can picture it. How many people were there, by the way? I never asked you that.
I want to say there was probably about 50, give or take.
Really? You did a presentation in front of 50 people?
Yes.
Okay, so in this episode, I talk about the Vidocq Society. They had taken a special interest in America's Unknown Child, or as a lot of people refer to him as the boy in the box. And it was a story out of Pennsylvania many years ago. And a lot of the men that had ultimately retired without that case being solved became part of the Vidocq Society. So I think I misunderstood what the Vidocq Society is. I thought you basically gave them a case and they worked it, but that's not how it goes, correct?
No, that's true. They are a consultation group. Basically, when I first came across them, I was doing some internet research on cold case training. And I initially came across the Vidocq Society webpage about 2 years ago. And what they are is a group of mostly retired law enforcement professionals, both on the state side and on the federal side. And there's also a number of members that are outside of law enforcement but have a special expertise that would be beneficial to the society. And these individuals get together on a monthly basis and evaluate cold cases and offer insight and suggestions to help perhaps get the case going again, or perhaps take into something consideration that we had not initially looked at. Basically, it's just looking at the case from a different angle and to provide insights as far as that goes.
Is that just from your presentation, or do you submit to them the file or anything?
I gave them a synopsis of Carrie's case. And
so we haven't even said that yet. The reason why you went to the Vidocq Society and your agency sent you to Philadelphia was for help on the Carrie Patterson case. Correct,
yes. And basically, I presented them with a case synopsis. If I remember correctly, there's 3 criteria that have to be met for them to even consider looking at a case. I think one, the victim must not have been engaged in any type of criminal activity that caused his or her death. At a minimum, the case should have a body, crime scene, or physical evidence. And the last part is that they only become involved at the request of the investigating law enforcement agency. They don't randomly go out and try and investigate cases. They have to be asked to provide assistance.
Okay. And then is there assistance just during your conversation with them, or can they continue to contact you with information or with thoughts or suggestions?
After the presentation, there's a period of give and take, question and answers. I know in my experience, after I did my presentation, several individuals came forward and said, hey, did you think about this? Or did you think about that? And then they also have a follow-on team that looks at it after the presentation is already done, and then they will discuss it amongst them, that group, and then will provide me an additional evaluation probably a couple weeks after the presentation.
Have you gotten that yet?
I have not gotten that yet, no.
And they could determine that there's nothing more to tell you, though, couldn't they?
They could. I know I did get some helpful suggestions while I was there from some members that everybody has a different experience and they bring to the table different things. A couple individuals, which when I looked at the case, I knew of the details, but I didn't give it the same weight as these individuals did. And they said, hey, you should really follow up on this particular aspect because that would perhaps alter the timeline of events. And, once they suggested that, I'm like, oh, absolutely. And unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of follow-up on that information in the initial investigation. So I kind of have to start from scratch on that particular aspect of it.
So I know you can't share what their suggestions were with everybody because it's a case that's still being worked on, but
correct.
And this is new ideas or new avenues to take. So I don't want to ask you anything that would hinder that, but do you feel it was beneficial to meet with the Vidocq Society?
It was absolutely beneficial. And probably the biggest takeaway for me was just confirmation of, unfortunately, something I already knew. This particular case is very difficult because essentially we have no physical evidence. So what it's going to take is that somebody is going to have to come forward and say something that will lead to a suspect identification and an admission. So that was one of the things that at least I wasn't missing a key piece to the puzzle. Where like, oh yeah, hey, did you check that? And I'm like, oh yeah. It was a confirmation of this is a difficult case, and essentially you've done everything you possibly could at this point outside of identifying someone that provided a confession of the crime.
Right. But they did make suggestions that you're going to move forward on?
Absolutely, yes.
So just out of curiosity, I know this has nothing to do with the Vidocq Society on individually or the story that I'm about to play with the boy in the box. But what made you choose to submit Carrie Patterson's case to the Vidocq Society?
Because, and like I said, I think we've talked about this in the podcast earlier, is that we really had no investigative avenue to pursue. The case was at a standstill. There was nothing that was coming in that was carrying the case forward. So if you know me, you know that I have a hard time letting these cases go. So I will try absolutely anything to continue to pursue these cases. And because with regards to Carrie's case, I didn't really have anything at the moment to continue to pursue. I am apt to deliver that to another investigative agency that says, hey, perhaps there's something I missed or any helpful suggestions you can give to keep this case moving forward. So that was my desire of presenting this case to the Vidocq Society.
And the Vidocq Society, they gave you a gift too, right? Like, are you part of the Vidocq Society now, or?
No, I'm not. I'm not a
Just
member.
Honorary.
No, they basically give you a gift box, and inside the gift box contains a magnifying glass, which is, the basic fundamentals of early detectives. The old Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
So, in thanks to me and my partners for presenting this case, they gave each of us a wooden gift box with the name Vidocq Society imprinted on it, and our names, and inside it contained a magnifying glass.
Okay, and you're saying Vidocq Society. I would think I was saying Vidocq Society. It's Vidocq Society.
I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced. I just know it has an I in it, so I pronounce it with an I as opposed to an E. But the meaning behind the Vidocq Society is that it's named for Eugene Francois Vidocq, which has been accredited as being the first modern era investigator. That's what the society is named for. And
the people that were there that you met, I'm curious, were they older people, or they're people who are retired, right? Just
it's a cross section of individuals. There are some retired members. There are a number of active members. Membership in the society is a little bit unique. To be an actual member of the society, it's limited to 82 members, which is representative of the number of years that Vidocq lived. Outside of that, they have what they call special members, which are additional people that can belong to the society that provide a certain expertise to the group. So there's 82 core members, and then there's a number of special members in the law enforcement community that can be members as well.
I feel like I've always been ever since I stumbled upon them, because they're not a well-known society aside from, people who are in your line of work. And even in your line of work, I don't know that it's that well known.
I had never heard of it until I started researching cold case training on the internet.
And I would be curious to know if the boy in the box story, and if, I should probably look this up, if they became members of the Vidocq Society, after they had investigated this case, or if it was reversed, they became involved in the Vidocq Society because they were interested in this case. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know which way it went, but I do know that the society itself plays a huge part in the story of the boy in the box. And just recently, I believe it was through the society that they had his body exhumed.
I'm not 100% sure. I haven't followed up on that aspect of it, but I know that there's a book out there called The Murder Room. I think the author's name is Michael Capuzzo, and that book is specifically on the formation and the founding of the Vidocq Society.
I will link that on my website then, on my episode website.
Which I read that book probably this past summer. So it gives an insight into the foundation of the society, the founding members, and a lot of their success stories as well. And I know one of the cases they highlight is the boy in the box.
Interesting. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you got together, and I'm so glad that you got to present Carrie's case, and that there's even light. I don't know if I want to call it light at the tunnel, but a renewed thought process when it comes to Carrie Patterson's case.
Yes, I know that one of the things I've also talked about with my agency is to do a press release with regards to members of the department going out there to present this case to the Vidocq Society to keep this case in the public interest, because like I said, somebody out there knows something about this case. They may not know it at the moment. Just keeping it out in the public venue is beneficial, in my opinion.
Do you think you'll do that? Put out a press release on it?
I've already talked to our PIO folks. Unfortunately, we spent all last week dealing on that child abduction case, so
Right.
they didn't get a chance to put anything out yet.
But do you think it's something that you'll do?
They said that they are interested in doing it. I can only offer suggestions and recommendations, but it's up to them on whether they actually publish anything or not.
So overall, though, you think that the visit to the society was worthwhile?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you so much. I know I was bugging you the whole time you were there. Am I allowed to post a picture of the outside of the building?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I post a picture of what they gave you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, absolutely.
After speaking with Bob, I did a little more research on the Vidocq Society and an update on the case known as America's Lost Child, or the Boy in the Box. Like Bob had said, the Vidocq Society was named after Eugene Francois Vidocq, born July 24, 1775. He was an 18th century French criminal who turned cop. Looking more into him personally, one of 7 children, his life of crime started early. As a teen, he was described as fearless and rowdy. He spent most of his time in fighting halls and spent any other time he had stealing. When he was 13, his father arranged prison time for him when he stole their family's silver plates. But it didn't do much to calm him, as he ended up stealing a very large amount of money from them to get to America, which he didn't make it. An expert fencer, he spent years and years in and out of jail, sometimes staying out a sentence and other times escaping just long enough to commit more crimes, until he made a deal with an investigator to become an informer, which ultimately, in 1811, turned into what was called the Security Brigade, which was a plainclothes unit that consisted of 28 detectives, all of which were former criminals. He's considered the father of modern criminal investigation and introduced such things as record keeping, criminalistics, and the science of ballistics. He was also the first to make foot and shoe impressions by using the plaster of Paris casting technique. Vidocq is named the father of modern criminal investigations. He has also been deemed as the world's greatest detective. After all, he was the first private detective, and the reason the Vidocq Society is named for him. As far as the Boy in the Box goes, an update was publicized in July of this year that said that the entire DNA makeup had been done on the boy. And then just this month, in November of 2021, a cold case detective assigned to the case announced that not only was the DNA on the child complete, he also felt confident in the results of the DNA on the abuser and likely killer, and that it would lead to a name there also. It's not likely that the perpetrator is still alive. The boy was found over 64 years ago, but there is still a chance if the killer had at the time been under the age of 30. On November 11th of this year, a memorial was held at the gravesite without a name, and the following statement was made by Dr. Michael Reiters, Chief Science Officer of the Vidocq Society. Through hard work, investigational good luck, and effort through science and the grace of God, we will put a name on that memorial. Following is our episode from 2 years ago on America's Unknown Child. Welcome back to Hunting History Podcast. I'm Kat, and I am here this week again with Tress and Haley. How many weeks is that now?
3, 4,
5.
5.
This is 5.
It is.
We're 5 episodes.
I don't know how to count.
We're saying
I've been drinking.
5. We're saying 5.
You don't know how to count when you're not
I
drinking.
know. I had to get my calculator out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
We're saying 5 episodes, but we're not necessarily going in order, but we're trying to record in advance because once we get behind it, it gets a little difficult to get caught up again. I wanted to say how lucky we are to have the listeners that we do. I can't honestly thank you enough for your time. I know that there's a gazillion podcasts out there for to choose from. So to those of you who choose to listen to us for 40 minutes a week, we're humbled and honored that you do. And which leads us to our first shout out we need to do for Anna Cannon, who is our first Patreon.
Woo, woo. And our quickest liker on Instagram.
She is. She really does like everything on Instagram. Thank you, Anna, so much. You're such a rock star.
Is she part of our Facebook group?
And Anna, you need to join. I haven't figured out how to invite people yet. So, look, does she have to search for it? How does she get on
you search the Haunting History Podcast group.
It's the group, not the
on
page.
Facebook. And join, and I will accept you.
Because we're doing a private group for on Facebook. So if you want to join, and that really is that's to all of you, anyone who's listening.
Yeah, private.
Not just Anna.
Don't have to know what you're commenting.
But yeah, that way that you can give us ideas. No one else knows what you're saying. We kept it private, so no one in your feed knows what you're commenting or what you're talking about. So feel free to post and tell us what you want to hear. And again, Anna, thank you so much. A lot of people have asked me what Patreon is. Did you know what Patreon is before we started doing it?
I did, because I've been a podcast listener for many years.
For a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you just a long and short of it is where podcasters can give extra content to members and listeners can support their favorite podcasters. Doing a podcast is such a labor of love. It's so much work and it takes so much time and time. I mean, endless time and money. And we do it partially because we love it. Obviously, we love what we're doing. For me, I love a good story. And if I can tell you a story that will either entertain you or enlighten you or interest you, it makes me unbelievably happy. So I love that I have a platform to do this.
I only do it because I love you, Kat.
Oh, thanks. Why do you do it, Haley?
Because I like the stories. I like what we're talking about. If it was not crime, though, you wouldn't be into it.
You wouldn't be.
I really only do it because I love you.
So I'm starting my other podcast. You guys aren't going to be a part of that. No.
Hard no.
You already got enough.
Do get all your time. I have to say that it's such an honor for anyone, for anyone to think that our show is worth your time. I know that time is such a rare thing to have. So I guess my point is I just really want to thank you. I know that there's so many other choices out there, and the fact that you're listening to us makes me humbled. And I don't know any other word for that. I also wanted to ask you to stay tuned after the music because we have a couple trailers for other podcasts. And we tried to originally play them at the beginning of our show, and it got really difficult in the editing portion for Haley. So we are going to play them at the end. And as a podcaster, clearly we love podcasts. Chess and I go back and forth all day about podcasts that we're listening to and what we should. Did you hear this? Did you hear that? So clearly we love podcasts too.
Listen to this creepy
sound.
sound.
Yeah. And sometimes we find some that we love and we want to share with you. So stay tuned again after you hear the music at the end of the show to hear a couple of the ones that we've just recently found. One is my podcast best friend, Michael. He does a podcast called Monsters and Friends. His voice is amazing, so he could pretty much read me the phone book, and he doesn't phone it in. He actually tells really good stories of cryptoids that I've never heard before. Another one that I found this week is called Yikes, Murder and Stuff. It's the same vein or genre that we do, but they tell their stories differently, and I really enjoyed listening to it. So again, stay at the end. You can hear both of those trailers. We get requests sometimes for stories, and we will have some of those coming up. One of them, the Bell Witch Cave. You guys know the Bell Witch Cave story?
I do not. I've never heard of that.
Outside of, it's in Tennessee, my soon to be home.
Yeah, right.
And that was recommended.
Haley's eyes just rolled so hard.
Do you know how long they've been talking about moving out of California?
Oh, I know.
I can't even tell you how many
You can't
years.
move out of California and then ever come back.
I can come back all I want.
You can't.
Yeah, I
You
can.
will never be able to afford to come back.
Yes, I will.
Once you're here,
Anytime I living in another state, you're like a millionaire compared to living in California. Anyways, the Bell Witch Cave is one of the ones that we live in a really expensive state. I know. I just picked up my whole Tennessee thing. See, I belong there.
I don't think Tennessee says y'all.
Sure they do.
Yes, I do.
They do?
Yeah.
One of like I said, it was a Bell Witch Cave, which was recommended to me from a friend from high school, Colleen. And Teddy, the guy who did our logo. So we're going to do that story.
Teddy, I love the logo, by the way.
But we want to hear what you want to hear. So you can like and comment on Facebook or Instagram. We just started a new Facebook group aside from our Facebook page. So if you are interested in joining and giving us your information, please search us on Facebook under Haunting History Podcast group, and we'll let you in. And you don't have to be shy. It's a private page, so you can say whatever you want and talk to us about any of our episodes or any episodes you want to hear. The story that I wanted to do today wasn't a listener request. It's one that I've been following. It's been discussed more frequently over the last couple of years, and most recently in August of 2018. It's a cold case that may be solved with DNA. And we all know how I geeked out. I get geeked out over anything with family trees and ancestry. And I belong to a lot of genealogy sites because I run another company that helps people with their family trees. And I belong to a lot of genealogy sites. So this story keeps coming up. And it's why I wanted to do it today. And it just recently popped up. And this time it's not about the victim, although I know all of our other stories, we kind of highlight the victim a lot. And this one isn't necessarily just about the victim. Sometimes by nature, we are attracted to the macabre side of life. And we get so caught up in the story of the murderers and their actions that we oftentimes get lost in that side of the story, forgetting the victims and completely focusing on the story. Or like I've said, it's sort of a self-preservation thing. We can focus on things that we can handle rather than focus on the victims. But in this case, it was different for me. We're not focusing on the victim, although the story is about the victim. And it would make me inhuman to not care about the victim because it's a story of a small boy. And it definitely brings compassion and heartache. And with this case, for some reason, for me, I was drawn to it because of the men involved in the story. And it was the men who tried to solve what happened. And it touched my heart so much. And I'm not saying that the victim isn't a big part of the story, because he is. But the men surrounding the case are the reason why I wanted to tell the story. And they're the men of the Philadelphia Police Department and the Vidocq Society, which I'll explain more as we go along. He would be approximately 68 years old today. Although no one really knows exactly how old he would be, because no one knows when he was born, or his name, or his parents, or who his favorite comic book hero was. No one knows anything. We only know him as the boy in the box, or, as he's more known now, America's unknown child. He is the unidentified murder victim, 3 to 7 years old, whose naked, battered body was found in a cardboard box in the Fox Chase section of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on February 25th, 1957. Do you guys know the story of the boy in the box?
No, I've never heard of it. But if he's 68, that means he's my dad's age.
He would be approximately 68. They don't really know how old he is.
He was probably 7. He was
He's born
1957, they found him?
So he was born anywhere between 1950 and 1957.
Yeah, my dad was born in 1950. That's so sad.
The body was discovered twice. The first time was by a young man who saw the box with the boy's remains in it while he was checking his muskrat traps in a rural area. He was afraid to report it to the police because trapping muskrats were illegal. 2 days later.
2 whole days?
2 days later, yeah, he didn't report it. And then 2 days later, a college boy, was in the area, but he withheld the information too.
What?
For 24 hours. And the reason that he withheld the information.
What's he doing?
Because there was a girls' school, a girls' Good Shepherd school for wayward girls.
Wayward means that they're bad, right?
Yeah, they're bad girls.
Okay.
He would go to spy on the girls. He was a peeping Tom. So he couldn't report the body to the police either because they would ask why he was there. But he had a change of heart a day later and reported it. His name was Frederick Benoist. He originally was one of the, he was of course one of the suspects at first, but he says that he thought it was a doll. And then looked closer.
I always think it's a doll or a mannequin.
Well, because I think it's unbelievable.
Well, yeah, I could see how someone seeing a little
I would
child
see
in a box would be a
mannequin
doll.
and be like, oh my God, it's a person.
You wouldn't, yeah. It was in a JCPenney's box. It says that Caucasian male, probably aged 4 to 7, whose nude body was wrapped in a cheap flannel blanket, was found lying face up in a large cardboard carton. They figured out that the box was originally held a baby's white bassinet, 11 of which had been sold for $7.50 a piece at the Upper Darby, Pennsylvania, JCPenney's. Police tried to track down, one of the first things that they did was try and track down the purchasers.
Wait, so only 11 people bought this bassinet?
That was sold at JCPenney's. Well, they could track by the serial number.
I know, but only
only 11 people
purchases were made of that
bassinet.
Particular bassinet.
But here's the thing. Well, 8, like they say that it was such a feat. It was so funny. They said it was such a feat for them to find 11 people who had purchased it because it was days before credit cards and things like that. They acted like it was such a feat to find all 11 people. Well, they didn't. I don't think they ended up finding all 11 people in the days before credit cards. But what had happened is 8 people who purchased that bassinet called into the police
and told they bought it.
Yeah, that they say they bought it. Some still had the box, and some said they threw the box away. So, I mean, the people who said they threw it away wasn't particularly helpful. Anybody could have picked up the box at some point. It was just a few feet. The box was located just a few feet from Susquehanna Road. The body was dry and clean, and the boy's arms were carefully folded across his stomach. The finger and toenails had been recently trimmed short and neat. The child was 40.5 inches tall, weighed 30 pounds. He had blue eyes, pale skin, and appeared to be malnourished.
That's a tiny boy.
I know. That's why I don't think he was 7.
I have a 2-year-old that's 38 inches and 28 pounds.
Wait, did you just say 7? Didn't you say he was 3?
They thought he was. They determined his age was between 3 and 7.
Okay,
yeah.
so he may have been a 3-year-old.
Yeah, definitely not over 5, right?
No.
Yeah.
No, I know. I've
There's
always
no
thought the
way.
7 was extreme. I always thought the 7 was kind of extreme.
Like, that's what
But they don't know, so that's why they said between 3 and 7.
she's.
And they narrowed it down to between 3 and 6. And 6 is really, he's very malnourished.
Almost 40 inches tall already. My daughter is.
Yeah,
She
he
just
was
turned 2.
only 40.5 inches tall.
Yeah, but someone who's super malnourished, I think
They're
could be shorter.
growing.
For their
Yeah,
age.
it depends on how long
They
they're
wouldn't be-
malnourished.
And this is in the 50s, so they
Yeah.
don't have as much food and
Yeah.
His
yummy,
They had food.
bad food.
His hair.
Big and strong.
His hair was described as light brown and blonde in color, and had been recently cut very close to the head in a crude, hurried way, perhaps in a deliberate attempt to conceal the child's identity. Small clumps of his hair clung to his body, suggesting that someone had groomed him while he was unclothed, probably shortly before or after death. And this is sad.
This would make me really sad.
Well, and I'm saying that the story is not about the victim, particularly this time. It's more about the men who tried to solve it. And it's not more about the men who tried to solve it, because the victim is always really important. But this is different than how I was talking about the Black Dahlia case, how it was so important to me to kind of bring her back from being the Black Dahlia and back to her real name. We don't even know his name. That's what's really sad. But he's always been the center of this. He was not sensationalized. The story was always about the victim and the men who searched for him or for his killer and tried to solve this case never once forgot that the victim was a young boy. Little disclaimer. This is the part where I'm going to describe a bunch of different things. So again, little ears should probably not be listening. So if you need to take a second to change the channel, this would be the time to do it. There were many bruises all over the child's body, particularly on his head and face. All of the bruises appeared to have been inflicted at the same time. There were 7 scars on his body, 3 of which could have resulted from surgical procedures. 2 of these surgical, in quotes, scars were on his chest and groin. They had healed quite well, the coroner said, leaving only a hairline trace. There was also a scar on the boy's left ankle, which looked like a cut-down incision.
What's a cut down incision?
It's a surgical incision to expose a vein,
Why?
so that a needle can be inserted to do an infusion or a transfusion.
So he was a sick boy.
I think that's what yeah. It said there was also a 1.5-inch scar on the left side of his chest and a round irregular scar on his left elbow. I mean, he's a little boy. So the left scar,
They probably had lots of scars back then.
but it's a scar on your
They
left
jumped
elbow.
off of lots of things.
Well, I
It's
mean,
like, what? Why back then?
well, no, I think people are like so much more worried about their kids now. They're like, put them in bubbles. But back then they were like, yeah, go play with your brother.
Yeah, go
whatever.
jump off that roof.
Yeah. Then on his chin was an L-shaped scar, again, 1/4 inch long
On
in
his
each
chin?
direction. On his chin. He had no vaccination scars, and the boy had been circumcised.
You have scars from being vaccinated?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. Back then, you do.
Back then you did.
Oh, wow.
Like my mom has a huge scar. Is it the
my mom did. It's
What
the,
is it?
I don't remember which one.
It's the polio.
It was the one that had all the needles.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's huge. It's right here and it's all these little holes.
By the time I got it, it was.
It's like if you were born like
have one.
1950 to 1960
65 or something. Yeah.
you had that. It's a round scar. You got it in junior high. I
And
think
it-
it was a polio
It looks
vaccination.
like prongs.
I've seen
I
that.
have one.
Yeah.
But mine was much smaller. They used to do much bigger ones.
Yeah.
So what this is, to me, what this is saying is that he was cared for at some point, though. If he had surgery and
Like
they said
he was sick and his parents
Yeah,
got him
take-
surgeries for like his heart
or
or
something. The inch on the scar on his chin and his elbow and stuff, not so much, but the cut down incisions, they said they could tell by
and the scar on his chest.
and his groin area was to get to a vein probably. There were 3 small moles on the left side of his face, a tiny one below his right ear, 3 small ones on the right side of his chest, and a large one on the right arm 2 inches above the wrist. The boy had a full set of baby teeth, and he was also slightly buck-toothed. And the
He
tonsils...
could not have been 7 then.
No.
You lose teeth way before
The tonsils had not been removed. The palm of his right hand and the soles of both his feet were rough-skinned and wrinkled in what police called a washerwoman effect, indicating that just before or after the death, one or both of his feet had been submerged in water for an extended period of time. When an ultraviolet light was shown in the boy's left eye, it fluoresced a brilliant blue, suggesting that a special diagnostic dye had been applied, possibly to treat a chronic eye ailment. Examination of the gastrointestinal tract indicated that he had not eaten for 2 or 3 hours before his death. X-rays of the boy's body, though, showed no evidence of current or prior bone fractures. The cool weather made it difficult to tell how long the child had been dead. It may have been 2 or 3 days, or possibly as long as 2 or 3 weeks. During autopsy, blood and other bodily fluids, hair, gastric contents, and tissue samples from vital organs, including the heart, liver, and lungs, were extracted for toxicologist analysis and microscopic examination. A mysterious dark brown residue, now remember this for later, a mysterious dark brown residue coating the interior of the boy's esophagus could not be identified, but the presence of a brown substance in the esophagus could be consistent with vomiting shortly before death. That's probably what you guys remember. No other unusual...
He was poisoned or something?
No. No other unusual findings were noted. Okay, so I just read that straight from the police reports. They took fingerprints and footprints and were obtained for subsequent comparison against hospital records and other medical files. They said that numerous strands were found clinging to his body and were sent to the FBI, but they just proved to be the victim's hair.
The what?
The victim's hair. So like
He was his own hair.
like how they said that maybe his hair was cut before.
Okay.
The case,
So they still have his DNA.
But that would be like right before.
Right.
Obviously.
yeah, they said they think that his hair was cut either right before he died or after he died, and they think the more I read about it, they think and I'll probably have the pictures on the Facebook page. I mean, I'm sorry, on the on our website. But there's 3 bruises on his head, and I'm doing it, and you guys can see it, but no one can see it at home. But if you put your pointer finger in the middle of your forehead, and then your middle finger next to it, and then your thumb. Okay. That's
We're
what,
all doing this, by the
know.
way, if you want to visualize.
Even
Lily.
doing it. We have Lily here recording, and she's even doing it too. Those 3, okay, that's how you would hold a child's head if you were trying to shave the back of his head. Think about that.
You would?
Yeah, like if your kid was moving around and you'd be like,
wouldn't
here.
you? You'd be like this.
No, but you wouldn't. But it's not unreasonable. The reason why I'm saying that is
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you'd be like, come on.
yeah.
You'd be holding like in more right here too.
And then like,
To the
no,
side.
and then you'd have the razor in the other hand.
Are we allowed to speculate what we think happened?
Well, the reason why I'm making you do this 3-point thing is because he had 3 bruises exactly like that on the front of his head. And it's not that unreasonable to think, and that means that his head was shaved after he died.
It also
no,
means...
you wouldn't breathe after he died, would you?
No, because it was the point, the way they explain it, yeah.
Whatever. What's
Where the
it
body
called?
pools right there.
What's it called?
Lividity.
Something
morbid
lividity.
lividity.
But you know what that could also mean?
What?
Is clearly maybe, that's not...
I know, that was
We just made a
oxymoron.
new word, clearly, maybe.
But that like he was sick and had blood what is that called? Blood transfusions?
Yeah.
Maybe this is me wanting to guess what happened to him. Is that he was really sick and like bruised easily.
It could have.
Because he was really sick.
Right.
And so that's why he had bruises. And also maybe whoever killed him, although not right and not a good person to do it, but was like going to have issues for the rest of his life.
Courtesy kill?
Oh.
Is that what it's called?
Is that
I don't know.
what
I
it's
just
called?
came up with
That
that in
makes
my head.
sense.
Courtesy kill?
Well,
But like, you know what I'm saying? Like as a parent, I could see, again, not because it's right, but I could see where someone would come from as being like, you've already had all these surgeries at 3 years old, like you're going to suffer for the rest of your life.
okay, well,
Not saying kill your
not as a
child if they
parent.
have sicknesses,
Okay, but
along the lines.
Let me get through the story first, and then you can have your opinion.
That's why I said, can we speculate? Because
Yeah.
I wanted to.
No, you can speculate all you want, but you're going to change your opinion really
Probably.
fast. I believe
Wait,
so.
but wait.
What?
Nobody reported this boy missing at any time.
No, and that's what I'm going to tell you about now.
So that means whoever killed him was his family.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Just hold on. No, it doesn't. The case attracted massive media attention in Philadelphia and nationwide, really. The newspaper, the Philadelphia Inquirer, created 400,000 flyers depicting the boy's likeness and flooded the area. So it was like really everywhere. And then they ended up putting him in every gas bill back, especially in February, you were using your gas for heat.
Yeah.
So they put pictures of the little boy in every gas bill. And the crime scene was combed over by 270
Like
police.
pictures of his actual body, or
His pictures of his face.
like
his actual face. That's why I'm going to put it on her face.
they took an actual picture of his face,
Yes.
not like a drawing.
No, a
of what
picture of
he
his face.
might have looked like.
Well, I'll put it on. I'll show you. I'll put it
Aw.
on
I would
on
not want that
the
guess,
website.
though.
Well, they needed to find out where the boy came from. They thought that he might have been kidnapped and murdered. They didn't know. So the crime scene was combed over by 270 police academy recruits. They discovered a man's corduroy cap, a child's scarf, and a man's white handkerchief with the letter G. But all those clues led to nowhere. The police even went so far as to distribute. Now this is really gross, and I'm going to put this on our website too. I say it's really gross, and then I'm like, yeah, and I'm going to put it on our website. They dressed the
Do you
little.
need to show me?
No, I can. They dressed the little boy up in clothes and took pictures of him.
It's like what you would do for a funeral.
They used
not
to do
take
that.
pictures and
Didn't they
post
used to
it.
do that back in the day?
Well,
Like,
yeah,
you would take
postmortem,
postmortem pictures, and you'd be like smiling next to your dead
No, I'm
sibling.
completely
Yeah.
obsessed with that. It's called
And
Momentum.
they would like have their eyes open and stuff, wouldn't they?
Or they would paint eyes
Or
on
they
their
would pretend they're
eyelids.
sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with it's Memento Mori is photos of your deceased relatives.
Yeah. This is a real picture of him.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a
little
picture of
baby
him.
Boy.
I know. They dressed him up and they distributed that photo everywhere.
Wait, the police dressed him up?
The police dressed him out. The police got
This
really
makes me want to cry. Really
and this
bad.
is why this story touched my heart so much, is because the detectives and stuff, they're hardened men. Now, many of them had fought during World War II. They had seen death and disease, and they were all just completely touched by this little boy.
Yeah.
So they lovingly dressed him. Like when I just say that they just dressed him and took his photo, they did it lovingly, and they did it so that they could find his mom. That's what they were doing. They wanted to give him his name. The lead soon fizzled and police were baffled. It seemed impossible that no one would recognize the boy and come forward. No relative, no neighbor, no teacher, no playmate or doctor. Investigators redoubled their efforts. They ran an article in a pediatric journal describing the boy's scars, but got no response. Despite the publicity and sporadic interest throughout the years, the boy's identity is still unknown. On July 24th, 1957, with detectives as his pallbearers, the boy was buried in a Philadelphia potter's field. A donated headstone said, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." So the detectives paid for what they didn't get. I mean, the potter's field, you know what a potter's field is, right?
No.
You know what a potter's field is?
No.
Potter's field is where people who can't pay for burial are buried.
Oh.
So a lot of times there's no markers. It's just indigenous people are buried, people who don't have any money. And normally like John Does, Jane Does are buried in potter's fields. They're donated land, and whoever can pay. In this instance, the detectives all chipped in to pay for his headstone.
No.
The case, although cold today, still has some activity. Unlike the Black Dahlia, whose files sit in storage and are seldom looked at or accessed, the boy in the box has for the last 70 years never been forgotten. Not because of the sensationalization, like I talked about in the Black Dahlia case, or news coverage, but because the men originally involved in the case. One of them, a man named Bill Kelly, a fingerprint expert, who took the fingerprints of the unknown boy, spent his entire life going over the case over and over again. He said the day that he was called in to do the fingerprints, he entered the morgue to find the entire police department there, all of them talking in low voices. He said he was so completely touched by the fact that these hardened men, like I talked about earlier, were so
touched by it and wanting to.
Yeah, they were devastated. They said that he was thrown away like so much trash, like just tossed in a box, and the box tossed in a field. And these grown men never forgot and never let it go. So like, and this is the difference between this and like the Elizabeth Short case. The Elizabeth Short case, that file is just sitting there. It's just a file cabinet that no one touches, no one looks at anymore. If they got a lead, there's a officer assigned. I mean, because there is always an officer assigned, like I mentioned in the first episode. There's always an officer assigned to the Black Dahlia case. He doesn't actively look. This case, he's not trying. If someone called in and said, "I absolutely know and I have evidence," then he's the one that they would call, but he's not actively doing it. This case is completely different. These men never have let it go, ever let it go. Mm-hmm. They've retired and come right back and actively.
And people have probably picked it up.
So why?
Right.
couldn't they test his DNA and find living family members?
Well, we're going to get to that.
I think that they're going to.
Well, that's like I said, that's one of the reasons why it keeps popping up on my genealogy pages. This man, Bill Kelly, he was called in to do the fingerprints, like I said, and he began his own volunteer mission. Nearly every day before or after work, he would spend 2 to 3 hours in hospital records departments, in warehouses, sifting through unorganized maternity files, all babies' footprints that are recorded at birth, because all babies, when they're born, their footprints are recorded. And he said that, this is the sad thing, he said
I never thought about that. Is your footprint like a fingerprint?
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
It's exactly the same.
Aww.
So that's what he did. This gentleman alone. I mean, there's 3 or 4 of them that are,
Haley just totally looked at her foot.
I was curious if it looked the same as my fingerprint.
there's 3 or 4 of the original investigators that never let the case go, and Bill Kelly is one of them. He said that when he went in to do the fingerprints, he had to do this thing, and it's so funny because I understood what he was saying. A lot of times when I'm doing research for this podcast, I have to disassociate myself from the actual story and just research it. I don't know how to explain it, detached a little bit. When he had to do the fingerprints for the little boy, and he had to do this on numerous occasions, but he did it specifically. He said that when he did the fingerprints for this little boy, he had to focus. He was doing the foot fingerprints, so he had to just look at the foot. He had to just concentrate on the fact that he was just doing a foot. He couldn't attach it. He couldn't attach his vision to the whole body.
Like it wasn't a person. It was just he's looking at a footprint.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how it is. He has to disassociate himself. And he spent years and years and years sifting, like so long that the hospital would call him if they had an issue with a newborn, that there was some kind of mix up in the delivery room.
Oh, they
would call him because they knew him. He spent so many hours at the hospital, and that's how dedicated he was. He wasn't getting paid for any of this at all. The police department wasn't going to pay him. He spent his own time. He says that he felt the boy's murder was a crime almost beyond imagination, but his being robbed of his identity was a crime against the very order of things. He believed that everyone deserved a name. And he told a story, and I'm going to read this to you directly, on one visit to the Wayward Girls' Home that I told you was located nearby. And he'd been there several times, that he asked a nun to pray for him, that they find who the boy was. And then when he went back again, like years later, he saw the same nun again, and he asked her he said he's been trying and he still didn't have an answer, and asked her if she'd been praying for him. And she said she had, but maybe God said no. And it's kind of what happened. He wasn't the only person that was preoccupied with the boy. A medical examiner by the name of Remington Bristow.
That's a name.
Remington. I love that.
I was going to say, you love the name
I have
Remington.
another baby. I'm going to name it Remington. Girl or boy?
He went by...
Girl
call her
Remington would be
Remy.
cute. Remy, yeah.
Remington is really cute. A quiet man with a craggy face. He had also been trying to solve the case on his own time. They were drawn together by their shared interest, so Kelly and Bristow would often meet in other offices or outside of City Hall offices. The two men agreed on one thing from the start, that the boy's abusive parents or caretakers must have killed him. Concerning the boy's grooming, perhaps it happened during bath time, that he had resisted and been smacked around harder than usual. The bruises across his forehead could have been dug in by rough fingers trying to keep his hair still during the haircut. You know how I had you acted out. Or maybe his hair was cut post-mortem to disguise his identity. They couldn't think of a way to lure the parents out of the woodwork. A year or two into the case, Bristow cleverly planted an idea in the newspapers that perhaps the boy's death had been accidental and his loving family had been too poor to afford a funeral. Bristow didn't believe it, but he hoped that it would bring the killer forward, and it didn't work. It said that Bristow's determination grew with each passing year. At year 5 years after they had found the body, he consulted a psychic. Man, we love his name and the fact that he called a psychic, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. Because it's a deeper story. In year 6, he offered $1,000 of his own money for any information leading to the boy's identity. And they found out later that Bill Kelly told the story about Remington, that Rem had a daughter who died in infancy from crib death, and they think that played a part in his obsession with the case.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the theories, and I mention this theory only because I don't want to leave it out because people message me and say you forgot about this one. And it was one line of the investigation, but it was pretty quickly cleared up, was that the boy was a boy named Stephen Davern, who was 34 months old, which fits into the age, and it was kidnapped outside of a Long Island supermarket in 1955.
Long Island, New York?
Long Island, New York.
Okay.
It was quickly ruled out because of a birthmark or something, like he was missing a mole or birthmark that Steve Danman had. And in 2003, it was finally completely ruled out. The second theory pertains to Remington Bristow's hiring of a psychic. It says that there was a foster home that was located approximately 1.5 miles from the site of the body. And in 1916, and Remington Bristow, I should tell you, was an investigator. He was an employee of the medical examiner's office. And he doggedly pursued this case until he died. Till the day he died, he was working on this case. Mm-hmm. And he's the one who contacted the New Jersey psychic, who told him to look for a house that matched the foster home, which they found. When the psychic was brought to the Philadelphia Discovery site, she led Bristow directly to the foster home. It was owned by Arthur and Catherine Nicoletti, and upon attending an estate sale at the foster home before Bristow told, he couldn't, this is 5 years later, for 52, he couldn't go to his superiors and be like, hey, I hired a psychic. She told me to look at this house, so I found the house.
Yeah.
So he went to an estate sale at the house, and he saw a bassinet similar to the one sold at JCPenney's that the boy was found in the box in. And he also discovered blankets hanging on a clothesline that were similar to the one that the boy's body was wrapped in. He believed that the boy, and this is him surmising stuff, he's just kind of trying to figure it out. He believed that the boy could have belonged to the stepdaughter of Arthur Nicoletti, the owner of the foster home, and that they disposed of the body so that the stepdaughter wouldn't be exposed as an unwed mother. Or it could just been
a foster child there's foster parents that don't take care of their kids. They found
all the foster kids were accounted for.
Oh.
That was part of the investigation, is that all the foster kids were accounted for. So that's why he started thinking, well, maybe the girl had a baby that no one knew. You know what I mean? And
no one knew they had a baby back then?
Well, they hid. For some reason, he thought it was the girl that had the baby and that no one knows she had it. And that that's the boy. That was the boy. Then they disposed of him.
But you could hide a baby back then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No. What do you think the home for wayward girls was for? I'm sure they were pregnant girls there, too.
Yeah.
They got sent away. Despite the evidence, the police were not able to definitively connect links to the boy in the box and the foster family. Because, again, the foster kids were covered, and the step girl was really just a guess by Remington. And then in 1998, Philadelphia Police Lieutenant Tom Augustine, who was charged with the investigation, and several members of the Vidocq Society, which I will explain. I mentioned that earlier. The Vidocq Society is sort of I want to say secret society, and I don't think it's definitely exclusive. Society of retired FBI homicide detectives, forensic specialists, people at the top of the field. And they belong to the society where they work closely with missing unsolved murders. Yeah. And they help solve them.
They were armchair detectives.
They were not armchair detectives. They were. They know.
They were out of the field.
They're the top of their field. That's a polar opposite of an armchair detective.
No, armchair detectives have solved some cases.
Yes, but they're still not experienced. These are men at the top of their field.
They were the first. They're the elite.
They're the elite. They're
the elite.
They're the shit. So, the Tom Augustine, who was a police lieutenant in 1998, teamed up with a couple of the retired detectives from the Vidocq Society. Vidocq. It's spelled, if you want to Google it, which it's fascinating. It's Vidocq. Right there.
I would say Vidocq.
Vidocq Society. He teamed up with a couple of the retired detectives from the Vidocq Society, Sam Weinstein, who was one of the first officers on the team but was currently retired. He was another one of the men who never forgot the case. And Joe McGillen, who was investigator with the medical examiner's office. And they interviewed the foster father and the stepdaughter, whom the father, ended up marrying his stepdaughter.
What?
Oh, God.
Yeah, so it's gross.
Weirdo.
And they closed the foster home investigation. They determined it wasn't a good lead. The detective and the men from the Vidocq Society followed tons of leads. And Bill Kelly, that I spoke about earlier, the one who did the fingerprints, he got involved with Tom Augustine and the two retired men from the Vidocq. And he was part of the Vidocq Society also, Bill Kelly. He was watching TV and saw an airing of a special on The Boy in the Box. And they were talking about a lead that they were following. It was the two detectives from the Vidocq Society and the new detective. We're talking about a lead that they were following, thinking that the boy was part of this Hungarian family and maybe part of this carnival family. And what they didn't know is that Bill Kelly had already followed that lead all the way to the end. And all the children were accounted for and wasn't part of the family through fingerprints and stuff. They didn't know that because Bill Kelly was doing this way after he had retired and on his own time. And he ended up calling them and saying, hey, I saw you on TV last night. I already followed that lead. This is what happened. So he kind of got plunged right back into the case again. So now it's the current detective and now 3 of them from the Vidocq Society that are working on the case. In 1998 also, the Vidocq Society arranged for the little boy's skeleton to be dug up for DNA testing. They were so disappointed
What
in
year?
1998.
Okay.
So he was buried in 1957 by detectives. They were the pallbearers, which these men are the same pallbearers, by the way, that are now working on the case now.
Okay.
How many years later? Someone, again,
I
we
don't know. I'm
can't
not
now.
bringing out my phone
God.
because I'm being challenged not to be on my phone.
You cannot be on your phone. 1998 minus 1957? 57, sorry. 61.
No. You said 2018. 1998.
1998 minus 1957.
So even with the calculator, we can't do math.
Yeah.
41 years
I
later.
say I'm the one that's bad with numbers. What do you do in your day job?
I know, accounting. Scary. In 19... I know. Our bosses don't listen to this, right? In 1998, the Vidocq Society arranged for the little boy's skeletons to be dug up for DNA. So 41 years later. Disappointed at the conditions of the gravesite and the trash and stuff that they found all over the gravesite in the Potter's Field, because the Potter's Field wasn't really maintained as much as...
Yeah, because they're not being kept up.
Right. They decided to have him reinterred at the Ivy Hill Cemetery, and they donated the cemetery donated a plot by the entrance, and then the coffin and the headstone were all donated by the Vidocq Society, and the detectives paid for it again, replacing his original headstone that had it read earlier, Heavenly Father bless this unknown child, with a new headstone that read America's Unknown Child, with a dedication date of November 11th, 1998. And then I'm going to tell you more about the DNA that they pulled a little bit later. But in 1999, the story was aired on America's Most Wanted, which spawned a ton of new leads and new dead ends for the elderly investigation team to follow. And then in 2002, I love that they said that.
At this age,
I read
they're
that.
like,
I read that exactly,
how
but it
old
says
are they?
they've all retired, and it's now
Well, it's been 40,
40. They were adults. They
42 years later, so
70
they
years old.
have to be at least 70, 80 years old.
They're about
this time,
70.
So they are
an elderly
literally-
investigation team.
Yeah.
Except for Tom Augustine, he's only 30.
Oh,
he's
new.
Well, he's the one assigned to
Yeah.
currently to the case. Currently, still, I believe even maybe not now. We're in 2019 now. On the morning of February 25th, 2002, and there's some conflicting dates with this, whether it was in 2000 or 2002. So I don't know exactly what it is, but around that time, the homicide division received a call from an Ohio psychiatrist about one of her outpatients. And because of confidentiality laws, the patient was referred to as Mary or Martha or just M. And it's so weird that everything they read, one says Mary, one says Martha. So I'm just going to call her M throughout this. Apparently, M had awakened in a panic and picked up the phone. She wanted to report a murder, and she needed to get it off her chest after all these years. So
What year was this?
2002, 45 years later, she decided that she needs to get it off her chest.
Okay.
M claimed that her abusive mother had purchased an unknown boy whose name was Jonathan, which, by the way, as the police were listening to the story, the one thing they wanted more than anything was for her to tell them his name.
A name. They wanted,
They wanted
for
to
the
give
boy.
him his name.
Yeah.
So, whose name she said was Jonathan, from his birth parents in the summer of 1954. The boy was subjected to extreme physical and sexual abuse for 2.5 years. One evening at dinner, the boy had vomited up his meal of baked beans and was given a severe beating.
The brown stuff?
The brown stuff. So you'll start noticing certain things that she says. With his head slammed against the floor until he was semi-conscious. He was then given a bath. Now remember, he died. I don't think I told you. His cause of death was from the head, from a beating of the head.
No, but you did say that his hand and foot was submerged in water.
Right. And she says, but wait. So he was slammed, his head was slammed against the floor until he was semi-conscious, which is what killed the boy in the box. Mm-hmm. He was then given a bath, during which he died. The details matched information known. Some of the details only matched information that the police knew. As a coroner had found, the boy's stomach contained the remains of baked beans and that his fingers were water wrinkled. Those were not released to the public. M's mother then cut the boy's distinctive long hair, accounting for the unprofessional haircut, which the police noted in their initial investigation. Again, I don't know that was released to the public. Mm-hmm. The pictures were, which would have seen that he did have a haircut. But the part of the police files
it would have shown short hair, not necessarily
that
a
he
haircut.
had a haircut. And the police said that he had a very. It
would have shown
haircut.
a bad haircut. Those pictures were a bad haircut.
M's mother then cut the boy's distinctive long hair, and then took M with her to assist her in dumping the boy's body in the Fox Chase area. M went on to say that as they were preparing to remove the body from the trunk, a passing male motorist pulled alongside to inquire if they needed help. M was ordered to stand in front of the car's license plate to shield it from view, so the mother convinced the would-be Good Samaritan that there was not a problem, and the man eventually drove off. Now, this corroborated a story that was given by a man who had called in a tip back in 1957 that he had come across a woman and a child, which they didn't take that seriously, a woman and a child, standing next to a car on Chase Road, and he had asked, he specifically said he saw a woman and he said a boy, and M's saying M is a girl. He saw a woman and a boy standing at the trunk of a car, and that he stopped to ask if they needed help. And
but
the
back
mom,
then, it could have been little girls sometimes look like little boys.
Right.
My mom has pictures where I'm like, what?
Is that me? Why did you do my hair?
No, of my mom.
Of your mom?
She
None
looks
of
like
you?
she could have been, her haircut and stuff looks like she could have been a little boy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I had my mom.
It wasn't like, it was short, but it wasn't like clean cut. It was short and kind of curly, but short hair.
My mom cut my hair one time really short too.
We don't even want to go into what my mom did for me. I've showed you pictures.
So that's another thing that collaborated, like when they found the files and they found that this man had reported the same thing. This originally taken as a well-meaning but ultimately meaningless tip now made sense to the police. M states that her mother stashed the boy wrapped in just a blanket in a box that she found at the site. So the box wasn't hers. She found it. The box was laying there. Mm-hmm. So all those 8 people that had called in and said that they discarded the boxes, any one of them could have been theirs. Yeah. Neighbors who had access to M's house during the stated time period denied that there was a young boy living there. They dismissed M's claims as being ridiculous. Augustine, the police detective, and Bill Kelly and Joe McGillen made a trip to meet M in person. It took her 3 hours to tell the whole story, and they believe her.
Wait, go back to
what?
Whoever said that. Okay, she said he had been subject to abuse and sexual abuse.
Yeah.
But we're only talking about the mom right now. Who was sexually abusing him?
No, she said her parents bought him.
So the dad was involved in it too?
Yeah. Yeah, she goes into great detail how her parents sexually abused him and that he was unhealthy. Mm-hmm. She says she believed that he had cerebral palsy. Mm. That was just her opinion. She was a woman and she was a young girl when this was going on, so it was by memory, but she always felt something was wrong with him and that he never spoke. Okay. And she's just referring to what she remembers. She says she remembers. The police, the detectives and the investigators from the society tracked down one of her college roommates and said, and the college roommate told them that M had told her that her mother had killed someone. The police don't believe that the theory holds up. The current police department don't believe that. They said she's I don't know, she's batshit crazy. I hate to say that because she might still be alive. I can't
But she's giving details of something that people don't know.
They're saying that there's only 2 details. The gentleman that stopped behind the car and the...
But that's more details than anyone has ever given.
Yes, but the part about the bath time, the washerwoman effect, they don't know if that ever got leaked out. The only thing that they know for a fact that was not leaked out was the baked beans.
The brown stuff.
And the gentleman who called in the tip that he had seen the woman and the child.
That's
by the
enough
car.
for me.
And that she said it more than she said to the police, but said it to her college roommate or whatever you said. Her college friend.
But they could never have put her on the stand. Apparently she had been under psychiatric care her entire life.
Doesn't make her unreliable.
That's 100% to them that does.
Psychiatric care because she watched her mother murder a baby.
Thank you. Okay,
and
so
she helped
that's
dispose of him.
Well, what Haley just said is exactly what the 2 elderly detectives said.
Yeah.
An investigator said.
Mess with anybody.
Is said that the police say that the reason why they couldn't use her for testimony or anything is because she's visually batshit crazy. Like she's been under such, and she'll be torn apart by anyone who questions it because of her mental stability or instability.
But what happened to her is what made her mentally unstable.
They say exactly what Haley said. The detectives say the reason why she is this way is because she saw, and I guess again they don't have anything in the autopsy reports about him being sexually abused. She says that's what happened. It's not in there. They say that. I think that would have been in the definitive line. And I'm just saying that now because I'm thinking about it as we're talking, is that had she said that he was sexually abused and the brown substance and the man by the car, they would have said, okay, she's checking all the boxes.
Mm-hmm. But they still wouldn't have been able to have her testify.
No, because she's crazy. But I think that would have confirmed more for everybody had they had evidence of sexual abuse. They never realized that. She was an unreliable source. It's exactly what they say is she was an unreliable source. So the problem now is that first of all, I did the math. She would be 88. So
you did the math prior, so we wouldn't have to say.
Yes, I did. I did it prior.
Good job,
yeah.
Kathy.
She would be high five. She would be 88. So I don't even know if she's still alive. And the reason I don't know that she's alive is because she was so protected by her doctor and confidentiality laws that her name has never been released.
HIPAA?
So, the HIPAA wasn't around back when this fall started, but there's no way for me to know if she's even still alive. And the thing about it is that because she says that her parents purchased him, that there would be no DNA anyways.
No, you want to go track it to her family.
No. Another lead that the police took seriously was that a man who reported in Philadelphia that his older brother had gone missing around the same time period as the boy in the box. He said his sibling's disappearance was a long-time family secret, and that another gentleman named Frank Bender, he was a forensic sculptor, had made a bust of what the boy would look like, and this man claimed that the boy looked like his father and him, and that his own father was dead, but no connection was ever made from that. Currently, the case is in the news again. In 2016, 2 writers from Los Angeles, and Jim Hoffman, and another one from New Jersey, Louis Romano, explained that they believe they had discovered a potential identity from Memphis, Tennessee. They requested that DNA be compared between the family members and the child, and the lead was originally discovered by a Philadelphia man who introduced Romano and Hoffman to each other. They have developed and presented with the help of Hoffman to the Philadelphia Police Department and the Vidocq Society in early 2013. In December 2013, Romano became aware of the lead and agreed to meet the man from Philadelphia and Hoffman to personally obtain DNA from his particular family members in January of 2014. So we're like 4 years into this, which was sent quickly to the Philadelphia Police Department. Local authorities confirmed that they would investigate the lead, but stated that they would need more research on the circumstances surrounding the link to the Memphis family, even before they compare the DNA. Apparently, this lead also leads to M. Somehow they're connecting it. Yeah, but they haven't said how. And I can't find the information, and I searched and searched and searched. So I believe that the newest line of investigation does connect to M, and it will be able to be done through DNA. So we'll never know if M's story is completely accurate, but if we can connect it to the family and there's a story there. So we'll be able to at least know who he was. And,
I believe her.
And
I do too.
And here's the thing, though.
Baked beans.
It's weird.
It all comes down to the baked beans.
Seriously.
I want to make a note about the DNA. The DNA is only mitochondrial DNA.
Which is what?
The mom's side.
Oh, okay.
Only the mom's side. It's considered, less useful as a forensic tool.
Yeah, because there's only like partial.
They can only go, and the reason why they only have that, like they won't be able to trace the paternal line through that DNA, but they'll be able to confirm or rule out a genetic relationship through the maternal lineage. Mm-hmm. When they pulled up exhumed his body, it was in such a bad state.
That was the only thing left.
And mitochondrial DNA lasts longer than nuclear DNA.
Because girls rule.
Wait, that our DNA lasts longer. Yeah, our DNA can go back further. So they got it from one of his teeth. And unfortunately, time is not on our side. The investigators who dedicated their lives to finding the answer to the boy in the box will not be alive to find out if scientific advances solve this cold case.
Are those guys still alive right now?
Bill Kelly, the man who never gave up, passed away on March 15th, 2014.
Oh.
Joe McGellen died October of 2015.
And wasn't there one other guy?
Sam Weinstein was another one, and I searched to find out if he was still alive. He was older than...
he could still be alive, though.
He was older than Bill Kelly.
He could still be alive.
And he was one of the first ones on the scene. No, I know, I agree. It's not likely they'd be in their late 80s, early 90s, all of them. So Remington passed away in 93.
That's who I'm thinking about, Remy.
He died in 1993. So if this case can be solved, it's going to be solved through DNA. And it may not solve who killed him.
It'll solve who.
It'll give him his name back. It'll.
Which could then lead to, if M is the correct story.
It could. I mean, we can only hope. The story isn't just about him anymore. It's not just about the victim, although, again, and I said in the beginning that you being a human to not have feelings and sympathy and just heartache over that little boy. But you also want it for those detectives. You want it for those men that didn't just go to work and clock in 8 to 5 every day. They
truly cared.
They fought to find the answers and give that little boy his name back. So if this case is solved and they determine who he was, and through that can determine what happened to him, it's not going to just be for him anymore. It's going to be for the men who spent their lives trying to find answers for him. On March 21st, 2016, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released a facial reconstruction of the victim and added him to their database. And despite the decades, the case remains open with the hope that one day someone will figure out the identity of the young victim and what happened to him. Will it be DNA that finally puts an end to all the questions and gives a name to the boy who found a place in the heart of the men who worked on the case? For now, the mystery endures, but the hope that 2019 will be the year that we finally get answers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Haunting History Podcast. We love hearing from you, so please be sure to like, follow, and comment on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Haunting History Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to all your favorites. Also, you can join our Patreon site for exclusive content, upcoming contests, and information only available to our Patreon members. Visit our website at huntinghistorypodcast.com for more information on each episode and links to our Patreon page and all the social media platforms. Until next time, I'm Kat, and remember, the living are far scarier than any ghost.
Hey parents, Greenlight is here to take one big thing off your to-do list, teaching your kids about money. With a Greenlight debit card and money app of their own, kids and teens learn to earn, save, and invest. You can send money instantly, set flexible controls, and get real-time notifications of your kids' money activity. Set up chores and put allowance on autopilot to reward them for their hard work. Then learn about the world of money together. Get 1 month free when you sign up at greenlight.com/podcast.